Welcome to the Cherry Picker, the horror movie podcast where we like to kill people, but not really. I'm your host, Zack Cherry, and with me as always is...
Brought Peggy here on our first date. Yeah, we all did. Eddie of Edward is Truth.
And Happy New Year, everyone. Happy New Year, Edward.
Yeah, happy, to you.
Yeah.
Is it a real holiday?
I have no fucking idea. It's the start of a new year. And I guess,
yeah.
Is this... So with the Cherry Picker, I know with a lot of podcasts, they'll do seasons, and I feel like we don't really do that. Like, we don't even really take weeks off. Like, we took last week off. And I think at the beginning of 2023, we took a week off. So it's almost like that's our hiatus. We get one fucking week of a vacation here, and
yeah.
So if we're like breaking our show down by seasons, is this like the start of season 3?
Yes.
Okay.
51 weeks of night.
Yeah. Well,
For you and
wow, big milestone there.
Right.
Good way to go, Cherry Picker. That's so exciting. Thank you to everyone who's been listening this long.
Yeah.
But we got a treat for you today. We're talking about 30 Days of Night, released October 19th, 2007. Edward, this was the first time you really chose something, and I was just like... No. Okay, let me preface by saying that usually how we do this is I'll mostly know, like, okay, we're going to talk about this and this, because a lot of times we'll have movies fall on an anniversary. Like, for instance, we did The Faculty and it was the 25th anniversary. Yeah. But in the weeks in between, I'll just be like, how about we do this? And Edward, you're always so agreeable that you're just like, sure, I don't care, that's fine, yeah. That's fine. And you for the first time ever, you're just like, how about we... Actually, the second time, because the first time was something else. I just like, I don't know how to find that movie. But this was like one of the first times you're just like, how about this movie? And I, for the lack of like anything else, I'm just like, sure, let's do it.
I mean, let the record show. I've suggested things even on this pod while we're recording that you've been like, we are not covering that movie. And I'm like, okay.
You have done that. That's like you're like bulldozing me in those cases. It's just like I did not agree to that. You're trying to have a record of it on audio and video.
I'm not trying. This was not premeditated on my part. This is just...
What was the last one? No, but you're always like, it's weird things, or just like we'll get to that sequel, and it's like Texas Chainsaw 7 or something. You know, like not that specifically. But like if we ever do this, or if we ever do like the remake of this movie, and it's just like that's not happening.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Fair
Fair
always
enough.
Conditional.
I stand
It's always conditional.
corrected. But I mean, this is the first time like off the record, off the podcast. You're just like, hey, I've been thinking about this movie a lot lately, 30 Days a Night. I was wondering if you wanted to do it, and I was just like, yeah, sure. I've got it on my I've had it on my shelf for when it came out in 2007, probably since 2008. So it's there. It was accessible. I'm like, sure. So I'm, yeah. Why this movie?
Like we were thinking, I think I had it in my mind even for possibly December because, it's snowy, it's cold, it's winter.
Yeah.
And also it seemed to be, a nice way to kind of like end our last season, as it were, with a Josh Hartnett jewel. With, what was the name of that frickin' movie?
Well, I just mentioned it like 5 minutes ago. But yeah, The Faculty.
Yeah, what was it? The Faculty, that
Faculty, one. Yeah. We're just doing a Josh Hartnett doubleheader.
Yeah. And so with this one, so that made sense. And also, I haven't seen it since, I think, 2008, because I don't think I saw this in the theaters. I think this was a rental that I picked up at Blockbuster with my sister at one point, and we watched it, and it was not terribly memorable, and I don't even remember liking it very much. And then somewhere in this past year, it kept kind of like popping up on like people's like underrated horror lists, or I think it was on a Shudder documentary, and I was like, oh, I remember that movie, and there were all these people singing its praises, and I thought maybe I need to revisit that and give it another look.
It's not very memorable, but we remember it. That's like the perfect way to describe this movie.
Right. Like, I remembered that it happened, and I remembered that this was the thing. I was even confused about what the big bad was in the movie. I think I talked to you about that off the pod. I was like, I think it's vampires, or maybe it's werewolves. I don't know. It's some kind of like thing that are attacking people. And I was like, I'll watch that, you know? So how about you?
Yeah, like as I said, well, the first time I got it is when I purchased it. So this is the Blu-ray, just for anyone watching. So yeah, this would have been like whatever the initial release was, I think. So I did not see it in the theater. It was a blind buy, and this was back like 2007, 2008, or it might have even been later. It might have been like 2009 by the time I got to it. But this was around a time where I would go to the store and I would just gamble on movies, and I could go in with like $100. And just like they would sometimes have like little shopping baskets for like the big spenders like me, and you're just like just fill up the basket, and I would like scrutinize. I would go in there and be like, hey, this is how much this is, and you would try to look for the things on sale because you wanted to get as many movies as possible, and then I would just walk out of there with it might be about 7 or 8 movies, just under $100. Or more if I was, being more strategic about the sales and whatnot. But sometimes there were things that were like, I really wanted to have, like I might have spent like $40 on one movie that I really wanted to have, so I would walk out with less. But this is one of them, and back in that day, I wasn't really buying Blu-rays. Like I was mostly still had DVDs, so it was like, okay, this is on Blu-ray, I'll get it. I don't even know if they had a DVD of it. Watched it. And completely forgot the whole movie, and it's sat on my shelf for like since then. So I mean that could have been like 14, 15 years, and I've definitely heard people talk about it. Like I've heard like friends like mention this movie, and I'm like, oh yeah, like that was a really good movie, and I'm just like, was it? Like serious question. Like I don't remember. So I was actually kind of excited at the prospect of that you selected this, and then we're gonna watch it. And I unfortunately I put it on and I hated the movie.
Really?
Quite a bit. Yeah, quite a bit. I mean, hate is a strong word. I would go 2.5 on Letterboxd.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because all things are boiled down to ratings. Yeah, I have no idea.
I found it painfully dull, uninteresting, and really poorly paced. And I think that's currently like this is the thing, because Letterboxd is bullshit. Like I might see a movie and it might be terrible, and I would like rate it 1 star, but I might have had a good time hating it. With this movie, I was bored. I fell asleep. Okay. I have to actually go back and watch about like 20 minutes of what I had fallen asleep to, and I didn't miss anything. Like I would watch this, and as I was watching it, I had to open up Wikipedia, and I don't know if anyone else ever does this, but I could not follow along with what was going on because this movie is, the sound quality is so bad. The characters are constantly whispering, because that's the thing. Like, they're trying to be really quiet because we can't have the vampires hear you. And then it would completely be, like, blown apart by these big, intense, like, action-y scenes where the music and the sound and everything would be, like, super loud. So here's me watching this at, like, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm turning it way up because, like, the characters are whispering and they're talking about stuff that's, like, really important, and I just cannot hear or understand a thing that they're saying. And then all of a sudden, like, some loud shit happens. I'm like, oh, okay, volume down, 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 down. And it got to a point, like, I had to put the subtitles on and watch this movie because I just could not, like, simply could not follow along without reading the text at the bottom. And I opened Wikipedia to just, like, slowly go along and just be like, what happened? What just happened? Because this is what this movie boils down to. It's just a lot of stuff happening. And it's not really anything that I've found too terribly interesting or unique or original. So that's kind of my main takeaway that I will say right now.
Okay. I guess I like you a
You're
little
like,
bit
I'm
better
so
than
sorry.
you did. No, but I mean, no, you didn't hurt my feelings or anything like that. No, because I mean, we'll get into it, but
Yeah.
Ultimately, I was glad I revisited it. I do wonder though, because I get what you're saying. I don't think you're wrong in any of your
Thank you.
Your breakdown of this. No, because I could never blame anybody for feeling that way. Because there were a few moments where I was just kind of like sitting there twiddling my thumbs, waiting for the movie to kind of like get to the point. And one thing that I think is this movie's strength, if we're just going to kind of like hot and cold it, I think it's at its strongest when we're following the vampires in their, and basically like anything that's action driven. And I think that even, well, we'll get to it. But,
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then I feel like it's at its weakest, adversely, when we're following these people, because this is the thing. I was missing, and I don't require much more. Like, I don't need like to completely revise this movie in order to maybe embrace it a little bit more heartily. But I think if we spent just a line or two of dialogue per character that we're following, just to give us a little bit more exposition or backstory as to like who they are, and so we can just kind of go like, oh, okay, I know who you are.
I mean,
like,
or if it
like
was
that.
edited better to show this plethora of characters, like who they are. There was a lot of work from on all ends that needed to be improved upon with this. Before we go more into it and you read your premise and all that, I'll just go over the housekeeping. So I do want to welcome some new Patreon supporters of myself, Zack Cherry, and this lovely podcast, The Cherry Picker. So welcome to Christian Venson and Elizabeth A. Thank you so much for coming aboard. We very much appreciate your support. And just a reminder to everyone listening that you too can support the Cherry Picker if you go over to my Patreon, Zack Cherry. And every tier gets you early access to all of our episodes. So those usually come out about 4 or 5 days before our regular Tuesday. And if you are supporting on the Freddy Krueger tier, which is the third tier, you will have access to the Cherry Picker After Dark, which is a bonus Patreon episode that we do every month. This month, what's it going to be, Edward?
I forgot. What are we doing? We're doing the comparison of the final girls.
I love how you're saying it so cautiously.
And their counterparts for the. I don't want to say the wrong thing. And their counterparts in the remakes. Is that what we're doing?
Yeah. No. And it was enough. Yeah. It was also your idea. This whole month has been. No, because we just talked about it beforehand. I'm like, I'm just letting other people decide, and I'm totally fine with that. No, because we're gonna do I guess original Final Girls versus remake Final Girls, because we just love comparing women. You know, that's just
pitting them against each other and ranking them as men. There's not enough of that in this climate.
Well, that's what that's gonna be. But as tastefully done as possible.
We'll be singing praises as well as fair critiques. I think we're not here to trash anybody, but I think it'll be even
I am
critiques.
But
all right, well, you can expect that from me, and you know what to expect from Zack. So
sure, whatever. I seen you. It comes out of you sometimes, but that's what you can. That's what you can expect if you're supporting on Patreon. So again, greatly appreciate it. Thank you, Christian and Elizabeth, and also thank you to Boy Cried Wolf, who is our podcast editor. We could not do this without him. So thank you to Boy Who Cried Wolf as well. Edward, premise us up.
All right. Amid a number of harbingers, like a collection of stolen cell phones, burned and melted in the road, and an entire kennel of sled dogs massacred, the local sheriff of a small Alaskan town soon discovers his community is under siege by a gang of bloodthirsty vampires, just as they're in for a month without sunlight. Left to his own devices, with a handful of diminishing survivors, will this young sheriff withstand endless attacks under the next 30 days of night?
Was that an Edward original?
It's so modified from like a few that I found on IMDb that basically
you just did a patchwork and then did your punny
and then
thing.
I just got basically I became my own thesaurus and just go, well, word doesn't work and that's wrong. That's it. So I'm gonna put I rewrote it. That's an Edward original. I think.
Okay, very nice. Yeah.
Approach.
Yeah, I don't sing your praises enough when you haven't really done it in a while, but when you do, it's an art form.
So thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so just skimming through some of the trivia here on IMDb and all that.
Oh God.
Not that that's a reliable source, but this is because I was looking at this last night, and this was the thing that stood out to me the most about this movie. Steve Niles originally conceived the story as a film. After years of rejection by studios, it was reworked into a comic book. Eventually, a studio that rejected the original screenplay went for the comic version. So, I mean, to make that more specific, what that sounds like to me, because I knew that this was, I guess, like a comic book or graphic novel. There's like a series of
feels like it.
graphic novels that this was based on. So this initially was pitched as a movie before it was a graphic novel. And the studios were just like, I don't like this premise. It sucks. Mm-hmm. And it was turned into a graphic novel, probably found some success. And then I would think like 2007, when did Sin City came out? 2006, right?
Sure.
Like Robert Rodriguez, Sin City. Yeah. That blew up. Like that was a huge successful thing. And then all of a sudden, there, like around that time, like the mid to late 2000s, there was this boom of just comic adapted, like graphic novel adapted movies that came out. Like every studio wanted to
300 in 2006.
Yeah. 300. Yeah, absolutely. Just like recreate the magic of these movies. So that's why they're just like, oh, okay, now that's a graphic novel. We love the idea. Let's do it. And I think it's hilarious because this movie cost $30 million to make. And even like looking at it, I'm like, why? Where did that go? And it's the irony of that is that they initially, if the studio had just made the movie without waiting for it to become a graphic novel, I mean, who knows if like it would have been as successful, because I mean it did turn a little bit of a profit. It made $75 million. But it's like you could have made the movie for cheaper, and just because you doubted yourself or doubted the script or whatever, now you waited till it was now a more expensive IP. And I just think that that's a hilarious irony. But no, go ahead. What's your how do you weigh in on that?
Well, I mean, the fact that it was shot, I think, entirely in New Zealand, and they had to accommodate more than a handful of non-New Zealander actors, like Melissa George, Josh Hartnett, Ben Foster, and I don't know who else in the cast was. Dan, what's his name? Danny.
The guy from Halloween 2.
Danny Houston?
Well, no, there wasn't the one guy. He looked like he was the guy from not the Halloween 2, but the Rob Zombie Halloween 2. I'm pretty sure he looked like. Oh, man, hold on, you're gonna make me look up the cast.
Yes,
list
I
here.
am. Because I have no idea who you're talking
Boone
about.
Jr.
Okay.
Who played? I'm pretty sure he just looked like he was in the Halloween movie. Maybe he wasn't. Maybe I'm just lying to everyone right now.
Yeah, I'm looking on my own here, and I'm not. Although I'm not anywhere near.
Oh, he
when
was. He
Halloweens
played a
were
character.
released.
He played a
was?
character in Halloween 2 named Floyd. Here, he plays Bo Brower. He's the guy who I guess he's like the snowplower.
Yeah,
Dude, who kind of like
the recluse
sacrifices himself, and I say that.
Oh
in
my
funny
god!
terms. Well,
he did air quotes. Anybody who's listening,
because it was not successful.
Sacrificed.
Because it was an unsuccessful. Anyway, that I recognized him. He was like the farmer in Halloween 2 that was abusing Michael in the field, and then Michael's like, oh right, I'm done with this shit. Okay. And I think he was also in I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, as the pawn shop dude.
Okay.
Who sells like, Freddie Prinze Jr.
He's done a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Looks like he did quite a few Christopher Nolan movies also. Like
character
Batman Begins
actor.
And Memento. Yeah, character actor. But
he's the recluse. And I always thought it was funny, like, well, just watching it, how Josh is like, well, I wrote him a citation so he knows that because it makes him feel like he's part of the community. It's just like, why don't you just take him out for a beer? Like, that's probably more
that's
efficient.
something that I actually appreciated in the exposition of like that character in particular. I mean, Josh Hartnett's character of Eben. Okay, did you spend like the whole movie thinking his name was Evan with a V?
No, I did think it was Evan, and then I was looking through the things, and it was just like the main character's name was Eben. And I was like, okay, so is that short for Ebenezer? Like Ebenezer Scrooge?
I didn't even think about that. But I mean, I think it's spelled properly if it is. But it's just, also because the way it's spelled, I read Eben. So I'm like, where did they ever come up with Eben? But I don't know, maybe they talked to the writer because he was.
I wish that her name was, instead of Stella, it was Flo. So then they could have been Ebb and Flo.
Ebb and Flow. Oh my god.
Hey, I'm here all week.
You haven't done a dad joke in a long time, so I really appreciate that. But
no, she's Stella.
Yeah, right. It wasn't until his brother, I think, while we were into like the final third of the movie, his brother was like shouting at him, Eben! And I was like, oh, it's a B.
Yeah.
All right. So I have to change all my notes because I wrote Evan. Like he's basically like the only character who really kind of registers as a character anyway. Because to get to the point where he's with Bo, and he's like giving him a citation because he's
the oil is like leaking out onto the snow.
Yeah,
we can't get that snow all dirty, you know.
And he's just like, he's basically just like kind of like, it's just so he knows he's a part of this community. And at first I did go kind of like, oh, okay, so you're trying to include him, and you're trying because because you're worried about your community. Maybe that's who you are. But it wasn't exactly heartwarming. And as I had more time to kind of like mull it over, because there is a lot of space in this movie, I will say. And so I had some time to just kind of like mull it over in my head, going like, or were they trying to like establish him as a control freak? Like, like just to make him remember he's a part of this community kind of thing. Because it was a very, I think, kind of ambiguous read from Josh Hartnett the more I thought about it. And the more ambiguous it got in my memory, I mean, my short-term memory as I'm sitting through the movie, the more I was kind of like waiting to see what kind of guy is this? Is he like, some alpha shithead, or is he like a decent guy? And as the movie progressed, I was pleased to kind of like discover, he's a pretty decent guy who's willing to sacrifice a lot to protect the environment that he kind of like holds domain over. I think he sees it as a responsibility, and that's kind of refreshing.
Sounds like you like him a lot better than Zeke.
Totally.
Well, I mean, I'm glad that you got that out of the character, because I mean, like, I got nothing out of anyone here. And I will say, just for Josh Hartnett's sake, actually, let's talk a little bit about Josh Hartnett. Because first of all, I was just like so disappointed that, I mean, this is Josh Hartnett, who, for all intents and purposes, was kind of my, like, one of like gay awakening crushes at the time. Not the time that this was made, but like at the time of like my like adolescence and stuff. Because I remember like seeing like H2O in the faculty and just being like, oh, he's so dreamy. And it's unfortunate that he spends this entire movie just like bundled up in this like big, like chunky coat. Like he's just like, it's like, what was the point? What was the why have him of all people? And that's not to denigrate like his acting skills, but it was just like, come on.
You still
Like
got his pretty face.
You have your face. You have your looks.
Your looks, your pretty face. And,
Don't underestimate the importance of the body language.
Speaking of
Sorry.
gateway,
Sorry.
entry.
But no. It was just like, come on. You've got him like completely bundled up. But an interesting thing, because I was looking up his filmography, because Josh Hartnett was one of those actors who just like completely fell off the radar. And I think it was mostly like, he took control of that. He didn't want to be this A-list Hollywood actor type. And this was actually 30 Days of Night, the last like big studio movie it seems like he did. Because everything after that has just been like independent film after independent film. I think he lives in Europe at this point. He has like he's married. He has 3 kids. I never knew anything about that. So good for him for like just like separating his life from his career in that regard. He was actually in Oppenheimer, which I did not know. Or maybe I did and I forgot. But that was the first time he had done anything like bigger studio since 30 Days of Night, which was 2007, so that's like what, 16 17 years at this point.
Like he has some pretty like I haven't heard. I'm looking back now, and the only thing I've heard like in I think the last decade so far. I mean, I've heard of Penny Dreadful, but I didn't see it.
Yeah, he did television.
He did 2 episodes of Drunk History, a bunch of movies that I never heard of.
He was on a recent episode of Black Mirror. But
that was 2023.
Yeah, but I was looking
at he's got a boom. He's done a lot that was released in 2023.
Yeah.
So,
but I was looking at his career pre 30 Days of Night, and yeah, there were just so many movies where it would have an exorbitant box office or budget, and the box office was always like came in way under. There was like one movie, I forget what it's called, that he did with Harrison Ford, like some cop buddy movie, where the budget was $75 million, and most of that went to Harrison Ford, but it was just like the movie made like nowhere near that. So that was one of them. He did that movie, the 40 Days and 40 Nights, the the romantic comedy. That was actually successful. And like that actually made a really good profit. But I think it was just there was a series of just like bad movies like Wicker Park, like not necessarily I've never actually seen Wicker Park, but just like bad movie decisions that whether his agent was just like take this role, that it was just like a string of like just like unsuccessful films that might have contributed to him falling off. But this was kind of like like the last real studio film that he was the star of. Like he did something called Lucky Number 11, which I never watched, but he was the star of that. But it was like, it had like Bruce Willis, Lucy Liu. It's like some like action movie. But I mean, he could have gone on. Like obviously like Hollywood was just like they wanted Josh Hartnett, but I think he was just done with it, and he's like, no, fuck this, I'm out.
Well, he reprioritized and apparently, started raising a family and just focused on them, I guess. But it's not it's not like he stopped working either, but he just took probably smaller projects that made sense time-wise as far as like his priorities and whatnot.
Yeah. For anyone inquiring, the first child was born in 2015, so this is more like the last 8 years.
Okay.
But yeah, good for him.
So just
we miss Josh Hartnett. Like
that was one thing I felt when I was watching. I was kind of like pleasantly surprised to see him be as good as he was with this role. Because like I said, I mean, even he doesn't have like big, strong, defining characteristics as a character. It's more like this kind of muted character who you find out things about him as the movie progresses, just based off of his reactions and his I mean, he gets to be the smart one in the room so often when someone's going, ah, no, no, no. He's like, shh, shh, shh. He's that guy. So, of course, we're going to like him. But,
it's easy for that to happen.
And also just the fact that, because that was, I think, the most trouble I had with this movie was arguably the first act when they were establishing everything. Even though I didn't remember... And it was easy to believe that it was based on a comic book because the cinematography, I thought, was kind of stark yet opulent. And I really enjoyed that contrast because it seemed like we were depicting a barren kind of like area that we were going to like set as the stage for like all of this action to take place on. But at the same time, there was an opulence to it in the sense that it looked beautifully framed. And I thought, this movie looks better than I remember. All I remembered was kind of like gray and snow and shadows chasing people and cold. That's all I remembered about the atmosphere.
It reminded me a lot of Red Riding Hood. That kind of aesthetic. Because I mean, like you're singing the praises of like just the cinematography, and I mean, I found this to be, I mean, just in terms of like something that is a graphic novel adaptation, I found this to be very bland, and I hated, like, it's just like, it's like all the color was just desaturated out, except for maybe like your reds, which were then like given this like really like dark, like very CGI look to it. Like it's just like really dark red blood, and it's very much like of that time, like just like all like the remakes of like, this is my least favorite era of horror, by the way, like the 2000s, like the mid to late 2000s, and it just really had that style, just like every remake that was coming out, where it's just like gray and completely desaturated and just looking like grungy, but like still polished in a way, like we've talked about.
Sure.
And the CGI was really hard to ignore here, and I don't want to say that like it didn't age well, because I don't know if it ever like really like looked great, because it's just like everything looked fake. That's the kind of that's what it seemed like to me. It's just like it didn't seem natural, but it didn't seem like spectacular in a way that was like trying to be stylistic or anything. It just looked like they were specifically trying to go for something, and that's what it was. But it wasn't like evoking anything that I would expect like from like a graphic novel, or if that's what you were trying to do, is just like adapt a graphic novel into a movie. It just felt very flat to me.
See, I mean, and we've been over this before, like I enjoy the subjectivity of the camera, so the fact that it wasn't overtly stylistic. I mean, like I said, like the opening, the first part, the thing that I tended to gravitate toward the most was the cinematography, because I felt like that was the most effort they were putting in, like framing things in a compelling way, and it was compelling to me. That was my experience. But after that, I did just kind of zero in on the people and the situations, and like I said, the action seemed to be the best pace, the best shot, and the best just executed as far as like all the cylinders firing that needed to be. But because I mean, I think it also started with a strike against it, because immediately it started evoking memories of The Thing for me. Just in terms of like, you know, aside from just the stark landscape with the snow and with all of these people who are isolated in a small community with the thing that's attacking them that could conceivably like turn them against each other or make them act out rash, you know, in a rash way, and everything. But even just the sense that like, you know, we're introducing like the sled dogs, and we're introducing even just the way that it started with something that felt like it was already in progress, where I didn't know. First of all, I didn't recognize Ben Foster. But immediately, I mean, until he was in like the jail cell, I guess. But seeing him just kind of like wander through, he is effectively like that Malamute that we follow through the snow as the chopper's chasing it. You know, like he's just kind of like, who is that? Why is this happening? And you don't know whether you're starting whether the movie's already in progress or whether you're starting at the end of the movie and he's going to be like the last man standing and we're all going to revisit this moment later. Like all of those questions, I was like, okay, you've got my interest. And then once it was answered, it was like, oh, right, this part of the movie. Okay, so it was in real time. Okay, can we get the movie going? Because by then, I don't know how much time had elapsed, but it did feel kind of interminable because we spent a lot of time with characters, and yet I didn't feel like I was learning anything really about them. That was, I think, maybe my sharpest criticism about the people was the fact that, like, this movie seemed, from my vantage point, to be largely kind of action-driven, just focused on, like, situations and the progression from one situation to the next, where so many things, all I got was kind of like, oh, the severity of being in a situation when you're desperate, like the lengths you have to go to or the depths to which you have to sink to try and kind of like salvage humanity, how you have to sacrifice a part of it. And that's fine and good. That's a great idea. But all I could think was, I would be so much more connected to this if I knew anything about the person, and we can go over a few examples, but just anything about the person who's being sacrificed right now. There were so many deaths that the people on screen were feeling the loss, and I was like, well, why can't I feel the loss too? I don't know who this person is, or like. There
were some, and because you mentioned like the action, and I actually hated the action because there were some scenes where they would be running, and then someone who would be like straggling would like get killed, and I'd be like, who was that? I don't know. Like the editing was so bad that I could not tell who. Like what characters were still there, what characters were left. There was a point where it was like very much like clear, okay, there's 5 people left, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, what's his face is over there, and I'm just like, okay, now like finally when things started to like get clear, it got complicated again. But you mentioned The Thing, and actually like I thought about that too, and mostly thinking like, oh wow, I'd much rather be watching The Thing right now. But I think that what is so special about The Thing in that way is like you're talking about like the characters, because we enter this world through them, and there are 12 characters in The Thing, and that's a large cast. But the fact that each one of them, I remember their names, I remember what they look like, I remember their personalities, I remember what their job or their position was like at the base. Everything just like worked so well, and we knew their relationships with each other. Like there was this sort of like interpersonal thing that was going on. There was like clickiness. There was like certain people who liked each other, didn't like this person. Windows was kind of the bitch of the base. Like that was made very apparent early on. Not everyone respected Gary's authority, like things like that. Right. And here, and also like just the sense of isolation. Like they really did a good job just in like the first minute and a half or whatever, like when we're introduced to them, just like getting the sense of isolation. And here, I feel like everything is being spoon-fed to us. Like whether it's like words on the screen just saying like, between this date and this date, it's like there's no sun, and this is the 30 days of night, and this is the northernmost town, and just like information like that, which wasn't there with The Thing. Like we found all this out like through the story and the characters, and here it's just like kind of in a very like comic booky way, like setting up like little bits of exposition that we need to know, and then we're introduced to Stella, and her whole thing, like she's just got to get home. There was like this scene with her. I don't know where she was. I don't know what she was doing. It was very confusing. I still don't know who she is or what this job was or why she had to go home and water her plants or whatever. But it's like, I've just got to get to the airport. I've got to get to the airport. And then not because of anything in the movie, but because of some idiot who like drives the snowplow into her, that she's kind of then put in this situation where, okay, now I'm going to be late for the airport. And then we get to the airport, it's closed. The airplane is gone. Fuck, right. I got to be here for 30 days. Like, like my plans or whatever she's going on about. And it's like, it feels so disconnected because it's just like there was, that to me doesn't spell out isolation. It just spells out like bad luck. poor planning on your part, just like a laundry list of things, but it does not give me a sense of isolation because we saw half the town or more than half the town who doesn't want to be here for 30 days of darkness, all packing up and leaving earlier in the day. There was nothing that was preventing her other than I guess her job and whatever like exposition she said is why she wasn't leaving until now to do that. So it just like it didn't generate the stakes. Like what would have been interesting if we had started out already in this position, because I mean I would think that if people were leaving this city for 30 days because it's darkness, they wouldn't leave on like the night of as the sun was setting. I mean, and that would be a very short day in and of itself anyway, because it's like that's just how daylight would work. It's just like the days become shorter until they're just not there. Right. So it felt like very disingenuous, like everything that they were showing to us on the screen, just to kind of establish this community and what was going on, and like yada yada yada. People are leaving. We're gonna change the population on the sign, and then there's a series of mysterious crimes happening, and it's all gonna be revealed in a little bit here. And the characters that we were being introduced to, yeah, like it's just like none of them were like we didn't get a sense of who anyone was. Even the main characters, I just knew who the main characters were because they were the most attractive people and they had the most lines, and they're on the cover of the fucking movie.
Right. Yeah. And also because they were alluding to things that I kept expecting, or I didn't even expect it, but I kept wondering, is this ever going to pay off? Are we going to find out the story of like what went down between these two? And we never did. It was just kind of like, I never should have left you. And it's like, why? Well, then why did you, or why are you saying that now? I mean, like, did you, like, what went down? Like, we need at least that much. And I felt like the filmmakers kind of like inattention to that what was a big demerit against this movie, because again, like, I'm just kind of like, well, obviously it means a lot to the people on screen. I don't, and I couldn't tell if I revisit this movie in some time again with all of those questions in my head, but with, I didn't really have a vivid memory of this movie going into it. So if I have more information about like where it lands going in, am I going to recognize more like in the behavior or in their exchanges, like lines going to register that didn't register before? Because I didn't watch it with the subtitles. I just kind of, if I didn't hear a line, I just let it go, because I was like, it's the movie's job to push that shit to the forefront. Because I've done it quite a few times where I watched a movie for the pod and I'm not getting shit, so I just turn on the subtitles, either the second time or I start over and start the subtitles, and I just didn't have the time to do that with this one. So I'm like, you know what, it's your loss, movie.
Yeah, it just felt like we needed tension between these characters just to get her there and like get her like to show that she didn't want to be there, and then like get to the end. I mean, for all I know, they might have like alluded to it, because that's another thing. Like that, with the subtitles, I was just kind of like blah blah blah, But I mean, there's a reason that this script initially was rejected, because I mean there is nothing to it. Like, it is very perfunctory. It's just like, we're gonna have these characters, they've got drama because there has to be human drama. Like the characters were not thought out in a way. It was just the premise. And I think that I will say, for the premise of like a horror movie with vampires attacking an isolated community at the very northernmost part of the world where it's dark for 30 days, like, that is a brilliant concept. But it's like they told the wrong story about that premise, and that's
told it in the wrong way.
Yes, yeah. That's what I kind of take away from this movie. And there was even like, I was thinking of just like, what would make this movie more interesting, and I don't necessarily think that this might be the solution, but it's just one thing that I was considering, and especially just with the time, like 2007 when this came out, because I was thinking of the show Lost, which was hugely successful at the time. And what that show would do is just like, every episode was sort of like centered on a character, and they would do like a flashback to their life before they were in this scenario. And I guess the reason why I was thinking about it so much is because I was so numbed by the the surrounding of just seeing this like boring landscape of just like the snowy whatever, because nothing was really interesting to me. That I'm just like, oh, what might have been fun is to kind of just like take us out of it and show us something, this character outside of it, and now here they are, and how do they kind of react to the situation that they're in based on their experiences in life. Obviously that's not something that needs to be done. There are, I mean, as we could see by The Thing, you don't need to do stuff like that. There are ways to convey who your characters are and build that sense of isolation in other more effective ways. But it was just here, I was just wanting anything that was other than just like biding our time and just waiting for like whatever the next thing is that we need to do, whatever the next thing that has to happen for the movie to get to the next part of the movie and the next part of the movie.
I mean, I definitely agree in terms of like the isolation and just not feeling it like in your gut. Like that's not, again, it's a difficult line to walk because you run the risk of antagonizing your audience or making them feel like they're going through something monotonous. But there's a way to do it. There's a way, it's all about balance, and it requires like some like fine tuning on the part of the filmmaker. And I didn't get that. I remember even being kind of thrown by the legends of like day 8 or day 12, like whatever day it happened to be.
Well, it seemed
in a
like
little, yeah,
most of the action was the first night. That's what it was just like, everything was just sort of like, most of the movie was like night 1, and then all of a sudden we're at day 18. And then it was day 27. Like it wasn't even like paced in a way that made it feel like the days were going by. Like The Shining, for instance, is just like where there really is no timeline. Like we don't know what day is what in that movie. Everything is disorientation. But it's just every day that like Wednesday, and it's just like it's becoming more and more unstoppable. Just like all the madness just like closing in on you. And here it's just sort of like all I'm seeing is like they're cold. They're hungry. They're probably shitting and pissing in their parkas, and it's unpleasant. But we just got to wait it out. And there's certain people in the room who are losing it faster than others, and they just need to kind of be calmed down. But the movie's got a movie, and those people have got to be like, no, I got to get out of here. It's just like you just got to wait it out for like 5 more days, and they don't. And that's what this movie was to me.
Yeah, I mean, you just got me thinking about like other movies about that, like showcase isolation so much better. You brought up The Shining, which certainly occurred to me also because of the snow factor, also, and The Thing. But also, just thinking about like the others, like literally Nicole Kidman standing by a window, just going like, "I'm beginning to feel completely cut off from the world," is more effective than anything they did in this movie. Yeah. But I'm wondering if there were like even just again like small devices. It wouldn't have been that difficult. I mean, if they could have even had one person who made it their business to try and like log like each day, like with a watch or something like that, and then like maybe like wherever they're on a wall drawing lines like Count of Monte Cristo, and then all of a sudden they get attacked by vampires who do not need to be invited in. That was kind of cool and shocking. But what if they like break in and like demolish this wall, this little fortress that they've like created for themselves, and they have to move on to another, the people who survive it. And whoever was using their watch is broken, and now and then that alone could like start to like just create a feeling of remoteness, because you brought up disorientation. I think that's exactly what happens when you start to lose the days. You just start to feel like you're living one continuous long night. Even just a line communicating something about that, like this night will never end or something like that, it's not that difficult. But I also it's really odd because I feel like there's a lot of really strong, capable actors in this movie. That's another thing that kind of like reminded me of The Thing, because you've got this ensemble of actors. Well, there's very clearly like one that we're following, a protagonist, but everybody is kind of like in this shared experience, and no one's experience should be any less impactful or relevant than anyone else's. I didn't feel that. And it's a shame because like you were bringing up Stella, played by Melissa George, who is another kind of like almost like compounded example of like a Josh Hartnett, because nobody knows her name and she's been in tons of things. The first time she got on my radar was a series she did called In Treatment, where she was a patient being interviewed. I think I mentioned it on the pod before. She did like 8 or 9 episodes where she's just like in a therapy session for a half hour, and it's basically her in a dialogue, but basically monologuing for like a half hour. And she's a really capable actress. A lot of people might remember her from the Amityville Horror remake.
Right.
Ryan. Yeah, she was the wife for
yeah.
Ryan Reynolds, and whatever. We can talk about that movie if we ever do that.
See, there's an example. There's an example of you suggesting movies.
I don't want to show my hand too much because Lord knows I have a lot to say about that fucking movie too. Yeah. But and she was in Mulholland Drive, and she was also the one of my favorite noteworthy roles she played was she was on Friends, and she played the nanny who followed up Freddie Prinze Jr. after he didn't get the job because his presence emasculated Ross or whatever when he was taking care of Ross and Rachel's baby. So he left, and Melissa George came in, and she was we found out, lesbian.
God, nanny. We could do a fucking podcast on Friends, like just Friends, like just like the cherry picker Friends edition. Because there's so much
revisit
to talk
it and break it down
show,
episode by episode. Well,
absolutely.
When we've discussed all the horror movies, we'll do a Friends pod. How about that?
Yeah, for sure. we'll be well into our 80s and by then, but
right.
yeah, it'll happen.
We'll be like, this used to be funny, but it's no longer acceptable. But I never thought it was funny. You thought it was funny. Anyway, okay, so that's who we're going to be. Okay. But another thing, I do want to talk about another praise that I can sing for this movie that I think was handled effectively was the threat. Aside from just the action, I thought every vampire. Okay, so they CGI'd their faces to make them like kind of warped, like especially the ones that are kind of like in the background, right? Because
everything was CGI.
Okay, because you were criticizing the CGI. The only time the CGI really registered in a way to me where I was just kind of like, oh, that you needed to run that through again was, I think, I don't remember at what point they're leaving they're leaving one haven for another, and they're going through a blizzard, and the snow is so not obviously snow, it's obviously really put in post.
Yeah,
that was horrible, because it's not even when snow falls, no matter how gusty it is, some of it catches like in your hair and in your eyelashes and in your clothing, and there's nothing on that.
And in that scene when they walked into the store, they didn't even like put it like you could see it through the windows. It was just like on the walk over there. But then I started to notice like other things that just annoyed me, because they would show their breath, like their icy breath. And it's like, clearly they're not in like a refrigerated environment. They're just adding that effect later. And every time I see it, I just be like, oh, fuck. It just bothered me so much. I will say that, like, I think, and you did sort of allude to this earlier, just like in terms of like the characters not being compelling, but maybe like the villains. And I think that the one moment in the movie that registered the most, just in terms of like a character moment, was when the main vampire's girlfriend was succumbing to the damage done to her, and there was just like sort of this moment, just like, oh, I mean, half of me is thinking, well, that's what you get. But on the other hand, it's just like, why are we sitting in this like these are characters, we don't even know their names. Like there's names at the end, but like we don't know anything about them or any of this. But the movie is giving them way more time to kind of go through this tragic moment than it is for any of these other nameless human characters. And it was successful. Like, I think that it was done to a point where just like, oh, wow, we're actually feeling empathy for the villains here and just like this experience. And that is way more than that has been allotted to anyone else in this movie. So I think that's one instance where things were done better, in my opinion, just in terms of like what was successful about the movie. I did want to ask you, though.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, tell me what you're going to tell me, but I also wanted to ask you because you mentioned the vampires not having to be invited. What was like the worst, I guess, vampire lore thing for you in this movie?
the worst vampire lore thing.
Yeah, like just like the mythology that was like sort of like for these specific vampires.
I don't even know if I have an answer. Why? You obviously have one. What was the worst vampire lore thing for you?
Well, it was that thing, like the UV light.
Oh, really?
It was I mean, it was a lot. It was like the setup for it, because it was like earlier in the movie, the grandma's like, "Yeah, I grow marijuana," and it was just like this kind of throwaway line, and then they're like, "Wait, we can go to grandma's because she's got UV lights." Because like forever, whatever, we're going back to the faculty now. Last episode, where it's just like, well, if you kill the queen, then everything else is fine. It's just like, let's just assume that UV light is the component of the sun that like kills vampires. Just the fact that it like so easily worked, and then he's like, oh my god, it worked, but they're gonna cut off the power now, and it all it really accomplished was killing that one, like his girlfriend, right. the female vampire, and then it just like it didn't have to do with anything. Like if that had become the thing, it's just like, how? Because she says, or Stella says, like, can we force the light sooner? And he's like, oh my god, that's brilliant. Like, let's do that. And it just turned out to be like literally a one kill thing.
Oh, okay. Anything that kept things moving was fine by me. Like,
but that's I would have rather the movie did something rather than just finding like just little like excuses. Just okay, let's do this.
I agree with you there. Like, this is not by no means is this like a movie I'm gonna like rush out to like buy and like put on my shelf.
I'll send you my copy if you want.
No, I'm good, but I'll revisit. I mean, if you want, sure. No, I mean, I do think I'll revisit it at some point. Just because I want to have the experience, like I said, of like going in with it a little fresher in my mind and just see like if it's different. The thing is, I think it's flawed for sure. But one of the things that was compelling the most to me, it's funny that you bring up like kind of like the most interesting and successful character moment as far as like establishing a relationship was between Danny Houston's character, whose name is Marlowe. I don't remember if we ever hear anybody else call him that, but him as a character, I thought he was just like the most compelling thing to watch on screen anyway, not just because I think he's a good actor and he's pretty, but like everybody, like he became like kind of the internet daddy for like I think a season when he kind of first came on the scene in everybody's periphery in American Horror Story. But what I love about the way he, not even just the way he plays it, but just like what it's there to be played with this character that I haven't quite seen played in this way with a vampire, or even like written in this way. There's a strange discriminatory streak to him that he loathes our kind, like human beings, the living, so much. Like his lines, even though he's speaking, we read them in subtitles. Those were the subtitles I read, so maybe that's why the lines resonated with me the most. But he's got this speech, and he speaks in absolutes, almost as though he's quoting a tome that he either was raised with or that he has comprised himself and has used to kind of rally these vampires in packs. Like, that would be one thing. If there was a way... That was one thing that got me fascinated with the lore, was like, do they naturally hunt in packs? Or are they similar to us in the sense that, like, you have to learn how to appeal to kind of like the appetites of the masses to rally them and get them to follow you places? Because I mean, literally, they were going with him to the ends of the earth, where if they're fucked, they're fucked. Like, if this doesn't work, then they're kind of trapped there. They can't just like, okay, get on your feet, let's all go back. Like, I wonder what happened to them once the sun came up. Like, where the hell did they go? But just the fact that, like, I mean, I wrote down a bunch of his lines. He kept saying things
sequel.
like, oh yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Aren't there two? Is there more than
no?
one?
There's one sequel. It's called. It was just straight to video. Called 30 Days of Night, Dark Days, and it follows Stella, and Melissa George apparently was like all set to do it, and then for whatever reason had to drop out. So they just recast the character.
Oh, fuck that shit. Have you ever seen it? Do you know if it's any good?
I have not seen it. It's I
Okay.
believe sitting at a 4.4 on IMDb, so it's
Eh.
probably not good.
I mean, just on the face of it, I wouldn't expect it to be.
Yeah,
But
4.3.
because clearly
Yeah,
the person, or not the person, but the character who I would want to follow uh, in a sequel would be Marlowe,
yeah.
and whoever survived, like whatever they all just like ran away from. But just like his speech about things like what can be broken must be broken, and the thing. Okay, that was also. I had nothing but questions, but in a great way. When Ben Foster obviously was sent there in a kind of Renfield way, I guess, a question mark, to kind of like, I guess, infiltrate these people. But again, like, it didn't really achieve
You
anything. Like, he
say
basically just got
infiltrate,
infiltrate,
infiltrate.
whatever. Infiltrate.
Yeah.
I don't know, whatever how you say the word. But anyway, he's there to kind of like just like get into these people's I don't know, employ
Well,
or possession, and
he's
but I mean, it
killing the
doesn't really serve any.
dogs. He's burning the phones. He was like cutting off whatever means that would
Okay,
have like allowed
was
them
that
to.
what he was there for? Because
I
I
mean,
didn't even
it
get
was
that.
not
Okay.
clear at all. I guess that was sort of the setup of all the rigmarole that was happening. That like Josh, or sorry, Eben,
Eben.
was like running around being like, oh, because it starts off there's like a pile of like charred up phones,
Yeah.
and they're like, this is strange, and then it
Yeah.
goes to the dogs and they're dead, and then there's like it's just like thing after thing, and then this dude shows up at the diner and he's just acting weird. That it's sort of it's there, like it's suggested, but there's a lot that this movie kind of glosses over. Like there's the when they go into the market, there's that little girl there, and that was another moment where I was very unclear of was she feeding on someone who was already in the market, or was she feeding on one of the people who was in the group that went to the market? Because that was another death that I was just like,
Yeah.
what
No,
is
I
going
couldn't
on?
tell either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But sorry, that aside, when the girl, the brother chops off her head, and they're like, does anyone even know who this girl is? Like, is she from here? And they're like, no. And that was the end of it. There was no more like questions or going into what are these people like. Clearly, I think that the setup is that wherever they came from, they were on that ship that were shown for
Yeah.
like a second at the very beginning, and that was the extent of it. So I mean, I think that they were definitely going for a less is more approach of just like the less we tell you about the threat, the scarier they are. But let me tell you, like there was not a moment in this movie where I felt scared or any tension for
Oh
anyone
wow.
or anything. So I mean, I'm gonna sadly have to say that they didn't succeed on
Oh,
that
okay.
respect. And I think that this in whatever the story was that they were telling, it might have behooved them, whether that would have made it scarier or not, it would have behooved them to reveal a little bit more, at least like give us something, just because the movie is so action forward, just to like give us some bits of story or explanation of to who they are, whether just peppering it here and there, that by the end of the movie we have some sort of understanding and fear of them.
Right. Well, see, okay, I agree to a point. Like, I think I had about 4 or 5 audible responses to acts of violence in this movie where I just went, ah, and one of them was the one that I was stepping up to. Again, like, now that I'm, like, discussing it, I'm like, but like, why, like, but then he got imprisoned, and then he was sitting there waiting, and then they came, and they, like, killed the grandmother, and the brother got away, like, Jake got away, like, or something.
There was a
And they
lot
left Ben
off
Foster,
screen.
and... Yeah, and then he's just kind of there like, they left me, like they didn't take me, finish me off, like, to Eben. And I mean, again, okay, see, this is weird, like, because everything that's leading to it as we discuss it, I'm realizing doesn't necessarily make sense to me, and I do have a lot of questions about, like, well, what was okay on the way there, but it led to a moment that I really, really liked. I'll get to Marlowe in a second, but with Eben, just the fact that like, here's Ben Foster's character, the stranger is what he's credited as, saying, finish me off, like kill me, because there's nothing worth living for anymore. And Eben has this moment where, there's just like, did they already see like the bloody spot on the wall where his grandmother was supposed to be? And he doesn't know where his brother is. And he's just wondering, are they alive? Or what does this guy know? And the guy tells him to finish him off because all hope is lost. And he just has a pause where there's just like, he goes vacant. And it's almost like he's making room to consider, like, could I do that? Like, I mean, I certainly could. I'm certainly angry enough with this person. And then he gets pulled out of it. And I don't even remember how, but he just kind of like snaps out of it and like, okay, we got to get back to like what's going on. But that guy's staying there. And then when he's still sitting there, like chained, like just, all sad and everything. And Marlowe comes in. And he's talking to him, and Marlowe is going on about, like, he's telling him something like, don't worry, we'll take care of you. And Ben Foster's giving him this look that might start off as disbelief, but then slowly kind of evolves into, like, a surrender, like the way we might associate with many other vampire movies that came before this one. That's the thing, these vampires are not sexy at all. They are far too violent and predatory. But I'm down for that. But yeah,
there's
but
more like screeching. They full on screech.
Yeah, with their and all that stuff. Their calls to each other. But the fact that like he has this almost seductive moment with Ben Foster where he kind of like lulls him into this false sense of security and entry, and acceptance into this community of theirs, and then he says to the other vampires around him the things they believe, and then he breaks his neck. And I was like, fuck, like, you're right, because for a second I thought, oh my god, so you are going to turn him, or are you? Wait, what's going on? And then he breaks his neck, and that was another audible response for me where I just couldn't contain it. I had to be like, oh my god, these guys are fucking brutal and they hate us. That was the thing that Marlowe really, I'm always going to remember about Marlowe now that I've revisited the movie. Yeah. This discriminatory hatred that he has of the living that like is, akin to like, racism or homophobia or any means of discriminating against a group of people, and just like kind of mouthing like these phrases that are assumptions about them, that are, stereotypes about them, even if they're just things that you've imagined about them, that just kind of fuel the fire for hatred of them. Because this is the thing, they're vampires. They need to feed on off of us. I get that. They don't need to hate us. And it seems like that hatred is kind of like born in Marlowe, but it's kind of like seeded and watered, throughout the rest of them. They really delight in our, elimination. And the fact that Josh Hartnett's character, when he turns, is able to kind of like fight that bloodlust enough to remember his identity and who he is and fight and go toe-to-toe with Marlowe. Yeah. That just brought up more questions that I like having about like, what is a vampire in this lore?
Yeah. Well, I think that they were very clear on that, because he said that, once it's in your blood and you're turning, you're still yourself for quite some time. And that's why he took that gamble at the end, because it's just like, I'm going to, have the strength and the skill and yada, yada, yada to be able to defeat them. But any longer, and it's going to turn me into one of them. And obviously he had enough time to sit there and watch the sunrise. So no, I don't think that there's any sort of, I think that they're very clear on that, but I love that for you, that you're able to, mine so much from these characters as you normally do. To bring it back to another, I mean, this is a more recent movie, but I feel like they did it here too, where they did the Halloween Ends thing, where we saw the teeth, the grinder thing way earlier in the movie, and I just saw that, I'm like, well, that's gonna come. Somebody's gonna get Michael Myers.
Yeah, totally. We're gonna have
And of course,
ground chuck.
yeah. It came back again later.
There was another thing that I thought. Again, it was an action moment, but I want to call attention to it, and I want to know if it had any kind of effectiveness from your vantage point. It was when, I don't remember the name of the girl. I think somebody called her. Shit, I don't know.
I'm not gonna know if you say a name. I know Evan.
There was some girl.
Eben
there was some.
Flo.
It wasn't them. It was, but also because that was the thing. I was confused because I thought it might have been one of the girls because they had a dark-haired, pale girl in their group, and I thought she got separated from them, and that's who was walking down like the abandoned streets in the blizzard, just kind of calling out for help. And then
Wasn't
I saw,
she the
it's
one
not
that
her.
was? Wasn't she the one that was there, like the one that survived at the end? That dark-haired girl. I could tell you.
The one who was part of the group was, but the one I'm talking about, the one who got attacked and slashed and hate crimed in the streets. Basically.
Yeah, I have no idea.
vampires.
She was wearing like a pink or red sweater or something.
Yeah, something like that. She but also dark hair, also pale skin, calling out everything,
no
and
idea.
they just the vampires on the rooftops in the background. The way that they established them and everything, I was like, oh shit! Like the way they moved and
just
stuff.
threw
Very
new
animalistic.
characters into the mix, like whenever they needed.
Yes,
like
they
there
did.
was this person did not exist in the movie before that, but we just need them in there now. But yeah, I was just I recognized the older lady who survived because she was there the whole time. She was the diner waitress,
right?
I suppose, because they actually did give her a moment. She actually, we got some personality out of her earlier on. I don't remember her doing anything else for the rest of the movie other than just like looking worried and being there. Good for her for surviving, but it's just like she didn't do anything to get there. So yeah, there were so many people. There was actually one moment, and this was part of the stretch of the movie that I had to go back and watch, and it's when they come back from that whole crazy venture to the store, and then they're like, okay, there's 6 of us left, and he's like, 5 of us, and lifts up his hood, and it showed the reactions it showed every character besides the person who said it and lifted up their robe for at least a good 10 seconds. And I'm just sitting there like, who? Just show me the fucking like, this is terrible blocking and editing that you're not showing me the person who's just spoke the line. I don't even know who's alive in this group or who anyone is. And the one thing that you have to do at this moment when someone's just like, there's 5 of you now because I've been turned. Show me who that fucking person is. So that was frustrating for a minute. And then Josh takes him into the back and I guess lops his head off.
Right.
But yeah, it's the moment that you mentioned, just like them on the roofs, that was effective. I think that by that point I was just so kind of over this town that they've created, because I mean part of it was CGI, just in terms of like the scope of it, and it was making me think of House of Wax, because there was another like little town that they built. Ooh. And that part of what they built for that movie was just so incredible, and it just like had so much character and personality to it, and everything here is just like Josh mentioned, or someone mentioned, I was sort of started listening to the commentary, or it might have been a feature, and they just said that it was really like evoking this spirit of like, I guess like an old Western movie. And I liked that aspect, and I just feel like they didn't lean into it, because that would have been cool of just like a Western vampire movie, but like taking place in Alaska over like 30 days of night. Like that's like what I would think like the premise would be, and then we're just not going to do that at all. So I mean, I think that there was definitely something more that they could have done with that, but I don't know, I found it kind of cheap, and again it made me question like, where did the budget in this movie go? Because it wasn't the cast. Like Josh Hartnett, I don't know like if you broke down his career and like how much he made per movie, but I don't think that it would have been like anything crazy, more than like a couple million on a picture or not, but
Well, I don't know if it snows in New Zealand, does it? Like, do they
no,
have to
they had
create
to no,
snow?
they had to like create. They were saying it was like made out of like paper, they did all
Okay.
this stuff. But I mean, like again, like you don't. That's the thing. Like movies don't need to be that expensive to get a good effect. Like I think like some of the best
Right.
filmmakers can make a very competent movie on a lower budget, and like we're seeing this. I mean, that's the thing. We don't even see movies that are made on a budget of $30 million anymore. It feels like now in 2023 or 2024, I'm sorry, is that movies are either made for like, maybe like 5 million, like 10 million at the most, but more so like somewhere in like 5 million, maybe lower than that, or they're being made for 100 million or 150 million or
Right.
200 million for like the
Right.
big blockbusters. There is no in between. It's like that is now a low budget movie, like $10 million. And I think that that's sad, because there's definitely like those movies that are coming out that are like $200 million can probably be made for 50 million, and these movies that are lower budget could probably get more money in them too. But like something like this,
Yeah.
like this could have been like half the budget, and probably would have looked better if they had done something other than like use all that CGI, which is probably where most of it went.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I would assume as much. But I mean, then again, like I think about like moments. I had two names that I did write down. It was the couple, John and Allie, I believe. And Allie was the one who kept getting dragged like early on, like underneath one house after another, and he was like chasing after
Were they the
her.
couple whose dogs were killed?
I think so.
Yeah.
I honestly don't remember, but I think so.
Yeah.
And I liked her. I mean, I guess
It's like
I liked
all the
her,
men
again.
had beards, all the women had dark hair. It was hard to like figure out characters otherwise.
Well, because what made her stand out to me was, number one, if it is the same person, she was the one who was standing there talking about like her dogs and everything like that, and just going like I want to kill him, I want them all to die, kind of thing, like talking about the people who did this to her dogs. And I was just like, I am on board with you. That is a perfect example of like an economical, just one line, get me on board with this character. And then I think it doubled down on like kind of making her sympathetic, because getting dragged for that long by this like kind of like mysterious force, this shadow creature that just, like is moving faster than the eye can really kind of like follow it until it knows to. And watching him go after her, and even like, I think the way they sustained it, because it lasted a while, it didn't feel monotonous to me. And yet the payoff with those characters, because I believe I was confused with her too, because there's an actress who's one of the vampires who looks like her, when Marlowe is addressing them, saying, we don't turn any of them. We just, we just feed, we just kill them all, and blah, 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 blah. And then there was a reaction shot from a vampire that I thought looked like that woman. And I was like, so no one else? Or is that just a woman who looks like the woman who was getting dragged under the house? It's like,
But then
I am so confused.
Then they turned him. They turned the
And then they
husband.
turned him.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was accidental or what. Like, see, again, that would have been interesting to find. And also the thing that I couldn't tell, like, is this movie working or not? Because I immediately became frustrated with Josh Hartnett's character, with Eben. Not even thinking, like, he's in shadow. You can't see his eyes. He's been under the house in the cold for God knows how long without freezing. Like, dude, at least, like, hold your gun, or just step aside and just go like, just come out, let me see you. But he's acting like, oh, thank God, come on, John, get out from under there. Let me wrap my arms around you and have your face this close to mine before I look in your eyes. And I was going like, no. And I couldn't tell if it was just, the horror movie trope playing out of like, no, don't go in there, from me as an audience member going, Josh, come on, get smarter than that. Or if it was just stupid and avoidable, because there is a better way to execute that. But
I will say that I think that the way around the turning of people might have come from just like an infection sort of thing. So maybe they're kind of like zombies too, or just that the bit them or the blood got into their system, because that's what it
Or
shows
scratched,
us.
even if they
Yeah.
scratched because they had those nails. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. But also, that was kind of like the first real example, glaring example to me of when Eben goes back to the survivors, however many there were. I couldn't keep track.
Yeah.
And they're all, wondering like, what's wrong? And he's just like, it's John. He became one of them. And I'm like, it obviously meant, because they were all kind of, and I was like, it obviously means something to them. Like, I wish it meant more to me. And then, then it was followed on. I think the next note that I had was the old man, Isaac, who was kind of like going cabin fever and needed to like get out. Yeah. And his son, Wilson, the one with the goatee, is like, Dad, screaming out and everything. Now, they have literally just watched a young girl walking around on the sidewalk screaming out for help, and watch the vampires just like encircle her and play with her like cat and mouse, like it was that level of like of predatory game, play going on. And here, again, maybe it's supposed to bespeak like, and they even tried in the script to go like, it's the lengths that we'll go to when it's our family or whatever, which is supposed to be a significant moment between Eben and Stella. Even though I still don't know why they're not together or what happened, but I'm like, yeah, I guess I get that, but do you realize, to an audience who doesn't know this guy, like, this is the first real exposure we've had to him as a character. This is the first thing he's doing that defines him. It's stupid, especially when you've just witnessed somebody do this and get slaughtered. Like, I understand you wanting to take care of your father, but maybe you don't go shouting. Maybe you just go out quietly this time and we play with tension, because silence is ideal for tension. When it's just, you're just, you're breathing and, and everything. And they didn't do that at all. They just kind of made the same mistake. And and also he knocked Stella over, like, in desperation as well. And I was like, well, this is just pandemonium. Okay, maybe I don't like this movie as much as I thought I did. Because I think that's then and Eben, he needed a puffer. He needed his inhaler at one point.
All I was thinking was little Tara Carpenter.
Me too. And anyone else who's ever needed a puffer in, like, in a movie. But the fact that, like, they're like, he's like, no, this was another thing. That's usually a crucial point, like a high point of tension, like where it's like, okay, oh my gosh, like, I need it, and I got to go find it. And he acts like, it's fine, I'll walk it off. And he does, like, for the rest of the movie, until they break into, I think, the general store, find the little girl vampire feeding on God knows who. And he finds an inhaler, takes a hit off of it. And all of a sudden it's like, well, you didn't need it, obviously. What, huh? I was so confused.
The little girl towards the end that Stella rescues, where did she come from? What was that? Because I feel like I missed something.
No, I missed it too. I think she was what I thought in my headcanon immediately. Yeah. I thought, like, the fact that none of them recognized her just told me that she was a member of the pack. And that they were fine with recruiting children, and that you can't trust anybody, and that was it. That was
the girl at the end, not the girl at the store. The girl at the end.
Oh, the one with the dark hair.
The one that she's hiding under the truck with.
Oh, that girl, the Grace. No idea who she is.
Gail. Yeah.
Oh,
Gail.
Just
another character that just showed up out of nowhere. Because I was trying to remember, where was she before? What was she? Was she like? This is like day 29, because it's like right before the sun comes up. It's just like,
she's got like a bloody face.
Has she been nuding her way through the fucking movie this whole time?
I wondered. Again, I thought perfect opportunity for her, another child vampire, but she wasn't.
It's a perfect opportunity to just be like, can we trust that she's like, because they went through the whole thing. It's just like this person's bait. And now they're oh, can we just trust, that this is fine? And the whole, like, everything. It's just like, this girl was like hiding out on her own for 29 days, and she just decided now to, like, unless if she was in the attic with them earlier, that was not conveyed to me in a way that I remembered her. So yeah, just craziness. And the other thing I'll just say, what I mentioned earlier, when the guy the one from Halloween 2, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, because he goes into
Oh,
that store and
yeah.
has this moment and he's just like, "You're not gonna eat me" or whatever, and he has the dynamite and then he just drops it onto the other dynamite, and then we see outside of the store and the whole place blows up,
Yeah.
and like none of the vampires are in the store. So it's just like they're all around, and all I can think is like, why didn't
Well,
you?
some of them
Like, why
crawled
did you?
in. He tried shooting at some of them, like three.
No. I understand that, but most of them were outside. He blew
Yeah.
it up. Like he could have like lured them in there. Something smart. Someone could have done something smart. And in this explosion, they all get blown out anyway. They're fine. They roll it off, and then he gets blown out. He didn't get blown up. He just got thrown out of
No.
the store, and then they ended up eating him
Yeah.
anyway. And I was just like,
Right.
well, that was just a waste.
I agree. I don't. The thing is, it sounded before like you were, discrediting Bo, and I actually found the act that he was like committing, like quasi moving. Like I was just kind of like, oh, here's a payoff. I can see A to B. Like this is why he needs to be a part of the community and feel like a part of the community, so he can feel like a sacrifice for people he barely knows is worthwhile. Like that's pretty cool. But you are correct in the execution of it. It could have been done so much better. It could have, but everything could. Even the moment that follows, this guy Carter, the one who suddenly reveals he's the first one we really kind of get clued into. There's a grace period, where you can like you where you still kind of know who you are and you're still kind of lucid or whatever, kind of like with a zombie movie. And the reveal and even his request for to be like put out of his misery, we've already had this is the second one.
Yeah,
at least,
the moment I
think.
told you about
We've
where I
had-
just like I didn't. Who is it? Who is the guy?
Yeah, again, like situationally, I was like, okay, this is all interesting, but again, could only be more effective if we had any memories or associations with him. And the moment, it felt more like a sociology study than anything else at that point, kind of like trying to make a kind of we are a society point that it isn't personal. And I'm like, movies got to be at least halfway personal, and it didn't feel like that. That was, so I guess I agree with you as far as that is concerned. Then okay, Billy, the deputy, who I thought was going to be a crucial component of this movie because he's kind of like they're arm in arm with Eben in the beginning, and they're talking about how I think was Stella the one who was gonna stay with them, or was who was gonna stay
I don't
with
remember
them?
what her sleeping arrangement was. It was just like,
Yeah, because they mentioned Peggy, the wife, Peggy, who we never meet. I don't remember.
oh, Peggy, the one who just like we've all been here with, and he's like, well, not with Peggy, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. I'm just kidding, not actually Peggy, but no. Then okay, we've discovered it was a similar thing with Carter, the sociology experiment with Billy killing his wife and kids to prevent them from being turned, and there's this high stakes scene that Josh Hartnett is playing of like this discovery of something that his friend, and is just like, they were your family, you have a family, and everything like that. And it occupies, I think, less than 60 seconds of screen time, and then they immediately recover and they're just carrying him out, no questions asked. And I'm just like, wow, this movie has no problem positing, like the hard questions without really trying to answer them at all, or even deal with the aftermath in a way that feels relatable. Because like, okay, so Josh Hartnett went from hysterics to, in his Oscar clip, basically, for this movie, to just kind of like, all right, so now we gotta, oh no, now someone else is missing. Every time we leave one place, we come back and someone's missing. You'd think we'd start, like, traveling together or something. But, yeah, so all of that I really started unraveling for me. But again, the vampires keep winning me back, because all of a sudden Marlowe expresses this line about like why they can't let the humans escape, the filthy humans escape, because they spent centuries apparently convincing us that they were the stuff of nightmares, that they don't really exist, so they could kind of like fly under the radar and kill us off. And if anybody escapes, that'll all be undone. So the mission is kill the humans. And I thought, okay, that's kind of interesting. Again, like there is a movie behind the movie that is far more interesting than what we're being offered.
Yeah.
and it makes it no less intriguing. It's just a shame that we didn't get, kind of like more stuff like that. Like I feel like all the stuff that's alluded to with the vampires, the mystery is most effectively employed, whereas all the mystery they try to kind of like put into effect with the living, it's just frustrating to me for the most part. So there you go.
Yeah. That's all I got.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Only other thing, it's a criticism. I'm sorry to end on a criticism, but the axe that nobody, like, Josh Hartnett's running through half the movie with an axe. Nobody else ever thinks to grab any other weapon. So when they finally go toe to toe with Marlowe and all of his minions or whatever, when the axe gets taken out, all of a sudden nobody has anything. They've just got like their grit and their determination to fight him, and the grinder, of course.
Yeah.
But I thought Billy's victory / defeat was kind of interesting, and I didn't understand the blood. Maybe they explained it, and it just went over my head. Eben taking the blood to change him. I didn't realize whose blood was it, and why did he know it would change him? Did they answer that question?
It was Billy's. He just took Billy's blood, and that's what I was saying. It's just like it was established that you can be infected and you're still coherently your human self for some time before you fully
that entirely escaped me. It completely.
That was like the one aspect of like the mythology that actually made sense to me, which is hilarious that went over your head. Anyway, yeah.
I just couldn't tell at the end whether I was supposed to be crying or laughing at the ash of Josh Hartnett. Because also like that, you know what? That would have been a good moment for him to show a little skin, so he could burn faster in the dawn's light.
Well, I don't want to see. I don't want to see that.
No, because first you'll see him take his shirt off as himself, and then start to ash.
Oh, I see. Okay. I was more so like what was going through my mind was like, how do you know that he's not going to combust into flames and then she's going to light on fire too? Like she was taking a gamble there.
Yeah, I guess she saw in her periphery the Marlowe's girlfriend get like charred. I don't know. They could
have had a shot, like a House of Wax shot when she was running by the cribs and she's like, "Oh, Bo, Vincent." We're like, "Oh, Marlowe's girlfriend. Oh, UV light."
I just hope the graphic novel climax is more effective, and I have a feeling it might be.
I think it's a series of novels. I think there's more than one. So I mean, congratulations to that writer for making something out of it. But I mean, again, I'll leave it on this. Like it was rejected by these studios for who knows how many years, and then it wasn't until it was trendy that they were like, let's do this now.
Sure.
So that speaks volumes to me. Anyway, shall we get to the cherry picker?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
It's not like we kill people on purpose.
So first order of business, we need a cherry on top, and I think that you've already expressed who you want it to be. So do you want to make it official? Because I don't give a shit either way.
Who do you think I want for the cherry?
I think that you want Marlowe. You really seem to be going on about Marlowe. Well, if it's not him, it's gonna be
Eben.
Yeah.
I'm fine with Eben or Marlowe. I don't care.
Well, it's up to you. So you throw it out there.
Cherry. Okay, Marlowe's more interesting. Like I don't want to completely disavow like anything that Josh Hartnett did, but. It's more solid as far as all the components working for me with Marlowe. So let's go with that.
Okay. I mean, you had an opportunity to amend your possible mistake last week, but speaking of which, last week we did ask you who deserves to die the most in the faculty. Your choices were Frank Connor, who was Casey's dad, or Zeke Tyler, who was Josh Hartnett's character. And across Patreon, Instagram, and YouTube, the vote was 842 for Frank versus 140 for Zeke.
Well, thanks, guys, for showing up.
Well, let's see how they showed up. Joe Parmesan. Wait, what? How are either of these guys options in voting? I choose Frank, but neither of them deserve death. Michael Diamond.
Disagree.
These are the most random choices possible. Who chose Zeke? I'm not even voting on this one. LOL.
Nice.
I'm getting dragged here too. Hamish.
Ooh.
If I had to choose someone, it would be Delilah, just because of how much she annoyed me during the first half. But out of these two, Frank, I guess, because he took that magazine from his son and definitely used it, so to speak. P.S. I tried sending Eddie a meme on Instagram. Doesn't seem to let me though. LOL. So go check your memes, Eddie.
All right, I'll go check my memes. My meme folder.
Rob Rangel. I didn't want to kill Josh Hartnett. RSDM. I'm voting for Frank because he took Casey's Playboy magazine. I mean, he also trashed the shit out of that room and destroyed school property.
Yes,
Blue box. I mean, do we really need to say it? Zeke/Josh because of that hair. Oh, this is very like Gale Weathers Scream 3.
I didn't even bring up the hair. I like the hair. It's singular.
I liked it better in the Faculty than in H2O. I mean, it's very much similar, but I think that he kind of, the character, we'll say, like it was more befitting of Zeke than it was for John in H2O.
Okay.
Yeah. Joker Jack. By the way, my name is pronounced Joker Jack. Yeah. Did I say it wrong before? As for the vote, I choose Frank because Zeke was an awesome character, drug dealing aside, of course.
And sexual harassment. But anyway, just go on.
Easy now. Jesse D. Yeah. Why Zeke? His drug helps them kill the aliens. Yeah, he was really fucking up his life before the invasion, and it was a waste because he was pretty smart, but I'm glad he got his shit together in the end. Honestly, I would have killed Delilah. She got on my nerves.
I mean, Delilah deserves to die too, but we can only choose one person each, so... And I thought, because, I don't know, I thought he was a little more aggressive than Delilah was. I thought he got to the teacher a little more than Delilah did to my girl.
Clea.
Clea Duvall.
Stokes. Yeah. Stokely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to say I was feeling bad afterwards because I'm like, maybe Stokely should have been the cherry on top. And we didn't mention it, but my favorite line is when they're all being introduced at the beginning when Elijah Wood gets elbowed in the face, and then she's just walking by and she's just like, crash and burn, Casey.
Don't even remember that line.
Wow. It's so good.
That's funny.
If I was you and doing my line for the beginning, that's what I would have chosen. Like, crash and burn, Casey.
With vocal fry.
Yeah, with vocal fry. Strifen19. I mean, Zeke is a degenerate, but if not for his mix, then the aliens would have taken over. So overbearing alpha male Frank gotta go. My chunky Geordie. Sorry, Eddie, I can't vote for Zeke, and I've never liked teachers. They try to mind warp you. Hope you both had a great Xmas and have a very merry new year. Thank you very much, Jordy. Appreciate it. You as well. Yeah. Sean Prinzick. Talk about a film that required a couple viewings to really appreciate it. While Zeke is kind of a jerk to everyone, there is part of me that loves seeing Josh Hartnett play a bad boy. Therefore, I gotta go with Frank because he's just an awful person. Zeke just seems like a kid who's going through some issues, although I didn't care for the way he talked to Famke Janssen. Speaking of which, does anybody else feel bad for the principal? The kids choose wrong and she gets killed. She doesn't even get an off-screen resurrection like the creepy science teacher played by Jon Stewart. R.I.P. Principal Drake, you deserved better.
Is that what happened?
Well, remember we talked about it. It was very unclear as to like what, because she was dead at the beginning. Piper Laurie, she's like, I always wanted to do that. When she stabbed her with the scissors, and then somehow she was resurrected, and an alien And then they're just like, oh, let's just shoot her in the head. And then they like doused her with all the drug. And then she just like turned into like a melty little corpse. So it's just like, that was the thing. It's just like everybody, like you just had to kill the mother and everyone turned back. But then they like fucked her shit up. And it would have been like, did they fuck her shit up or was she already dead? Like, it didn't make any sense. Because we talked about, was it a hive mind? What is it? What was there was so much about the alien that wasn't. We just did this episode, Edward. Come on.
I know, but this is how forgettable it is for me. Like, literally, I will watch 30 Days of Night voluntarily before I will revisit.
Wow.
It's
that
true.
Is an unpopular
Sorry if that's controversial,
opinion,
folks, but
if I
it gotta be me.
The Tar Man had to choose Frank because in terms of on-screen appearances, he's far more unreasonable than Zeke. And in being a grown-ass adult, a father no less, should probably consider that his well-behaved, academically gifted son wouldn't just lie to him about something so serious. And even if he still didn't believe him, which would be reasonable, he be concerned about what's scaring his son so much that he feels the need to craft a grand conspiracy narrative to stay out of school. Zeke is an immature, annoying young man, and even in the script for the film, where he's much more of an antagonistic character outright prior to the alien plot being in full swing, those factors are at play for me. Still don't like him, but he's 19 and clearly hasn't been raised right, and also hasn't had enough humbling life experiences to be better. Doesn't help that he's, I think, pretty directly implied to be engaging in an inappropriate relationship with a teacher after the invasion is thwarted, so he's probably still doomed.
Right.
Elliot from Orlando. Frank was a lunatic who got unhinged because of his son's one time getting in trouble at school. It's giving dad who was a high school jock who's ashamed of his smart, non-athletic kid. There's never any indication that Casey had been in trouble before, and his loony reaction is simply outsized and disproportionate. Silent Saturn, how is the dad winning? Most of the reasons Zack gives actually point to the mother. She suggested therapy and asked to remove the porn. The dad, all things considered, was the least strict of the parents. Anyway, I vote for Zeke. You just don't talk to my girl Fomka that way. Also, that horrible hairdo. There's sexy messy, and there's whatever this is. Never got the Josh Hartnett hype myself. Ooh.
Wow. I mean, okay, I didn't get it at the time because I was old enough that I could look back. I didn't date younger until I was in my 30s, so I would look at Josh Hartnett at that point and be like, "Oh, that's a kid." So I didn't have the same feelings you did toward him at the time. But nowadays,
how old are you?
Especially him today, I'm 44.
Well, how old do you think he is?
I mean, at the time, like
he was. No, how old do you think he is now?
He was either my age or younger. I don't know how old he is now. I don't know, but he was still playing teenagers when I had already, graduated high school. So,
he's 45, so he's older than you. Okay,
that's fine. Like I said,
no,
I wasn't into guys my age, and I thought he was younger at the time.
Okay,
apparently,
fair,
so
fair.
No, I liked older. I liked men when I was younger. So anyway,
Liz Purr. She was into men. Yeah.
It was her thing. I respected it. I was the fake Liz Purr that
Thomas Baker
created.
Thomas Baker, my vote goes to Zeke. Still don't like the hair. The hair, it's all coming in.
But that was never an issue for me. I always thought the hair worked on him. But okay, whatever.
Tiona S. I voted for Frank because I remember Zeke as a main character with some substance, and Frank as someone's asshole dad who didn't believe what was going on. So yeah, Frank should die.
Substance is a reach, but okay.
Fred Hodder. Between the two, Frank was the bigger asshole, so I choose him. Craig says Josh for that stupid haircut he had in more than one movie. And
I never intended this.
No, it's just coming out. Finest Winter Cold says Frank is the worst. The gaslighting alone. So, okay, 30 Days a Night. This is because I don't know any fucking character other than I mean, thank God that Stella was blonde, because how else would I have been able to distinguish her from anyone else? There was a blonde vampire, but no, I'm going to go with the stranger because first of all, like completely underutilized for whatever his Renfield position was, not explained properly. He just irked me, and he killed dogs. And you know, in horror movies, you know, you can kill all the people you want, but you know, you kill the dogs unless you're Michael Myers and you got hungry, or the dog was bothering Annie. Then you gotta pay the piper. So,
and that was another element.
the
The fact that they were
stranger.
killed with a knife. That was heartbreaking. The fact they were killed with a knife instead of,
Yeah.
you know, just vampirism. Like, yeah, that's too real. Ugh. Okay, cool. And I'm gonna choose, just because I guess he annoyed me more than anybody else. Wilson, the guy with the goatee who chases his father. Because, like, you know, the lengths to which we'll go to try and, you know, save our own and save our family and all of that, you know, notwithstanding. It's just, it feels tropey. It doesn't hit in a way that I'm like, yeah, I get that. Or, oh, yeah, I get that. You know, I'm just kind of like, yeah, but there's other ways you could have done it, you dumbass. Like, as far as deserves to die, like, all of his actions are those of someone who does not deserve to succeed in his pursuit. So I think he deserves the death that he gets. If he dies. I don't even remember if he dies now. I'm already forgetting.
Oh, he totally did. Yeah. It might have been off screen. There's so many off screen kills. All right. Yeah. So there you have it. You can vote for the stranger, or you can vote for Wilson. Vote your heart, vote your conscience. The polls are on Instagram at the Cherry Picker Pod. You can also vote on YouTube in the community section. So subscribe to us there, the Cherry Picker. If you are new to the Cherry Picker, you can listen to us. The RSS feed link is in the descriptions down below. And if you are listening to us, come over and watch us on YouTube. Lots of ways to enjoy this. Also, you can vote on Patreon. So remember, if you are supporting on Patreon, you get an extra vote there as well. Edward, where can they find you on Soch?
I'm on Instagram, Letterboxd, YouTube, and kind of TikTok. Edward is Truth, one word, traditional spelling. What about you, Zach?
Awesome. You can find my main YouTube channel, Zack Cherry, ZackCherry. Subscribe over there. Go follow me on Instagram at RetroBitchface, all one word. Also on Letterboxd, Zack Cherry, same as before. Yeah. What's going on next week?
I wrote it down. It's the one where the hell is dragged me to.
Yeah. Which is, again, in keeping in line with me not picking anything this month. This was suggested by our editor, Boy Cried Wolf. So next week we will be talking about Drag Me to Hell, which is another late 2000s movie that I have not revisited since I saw it at that time. So I'm interested to see if there's a pattern that's emerging here, or if we can break that. So,
yeah.
So thank you for watching. Thank you for listening.